Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting custom knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Zieba Knives S7 in Damasteel. This is a beautiful custom knife. It's going to kind of tilt a little bit there. Sorry about that glare. A lot of you guys know how I like to do custom knife videos on this channel. I don't like to critique people's custom work. Oftentimes, custom knives are made more or less with an air of utility or an air of art or both. They also sort of cater to a very particular crowd of people who are looking to spend that type of money for a number of different things, you know, be it exclusivity or something that just makes them feel like they're carrying something that's above what's regularly available out there. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to critique it because it doesn't make sense. These types of knives I like to just kind of look at and be like, wow, look how interesting this is. And so that's how I present them. This knife was actually provided for review by my good buddy at Shaker MT 1970. You guys probably all have heard Shaker's name before. He's one of, there's a bunch of people who provide knives for content on this channel, but Shaker's one of the main three who's constantly providing knives. And so give him a follow on Instagram. Absolutely, he deserves it. He's a great supporter of this channel. He's been here forever, it seems like. So thank you so much, Shaker. This is a beautiful piece. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy. It's just going to teeter. That's just what it's going to happen with the pocket clip. Overall length is coming in at just a little bit. I want to make sure you guys can actually see it on camera. So I don't want to touch it either. It's a little shy of 7 inches. We're looking at like 6.9 inches overall. Blade length is coming in pretty uncontroversially at 3 inches. I don't know that you're going to get away with that in those areas where that's a legality issue. Cutting edge is about 2.8 inches overall. Let's do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. You can see there, this isn't, I don't want to say that this is a tiny knife. I would say it's like medium small. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Para 3 is coming in at 7.25 inches. This is a pretty darn good size comparison. Not nearly as much handle room, but there's definitely more cutting edge than the Para 3. Let's put it up against another Zieba because I just happen to own a custom Zieba S5 Mini. It's very close to the same size as, in fact, it might just be almost identical. That knife was sent to me by @GoodNowJeff. He gave that to me. That was a gift. Despite my objections, Jeff, like many of the things that he's given and that Shaker's given, they just give. They're just great people. So thanks to Jeff and Shaker, I'm able to bring you guys this probably fairly rare size comparison on YouTube. This is something to keep in mind, though. The S7 is way thinner. This guy, it has a thin stock, which is nice considering we exist in a time where performance-oriented knives are very popular, right? It used to be that the thick, overbuilt stuff was really popular, then we kind of had an in-between stage, and now it seems like popularity tends to favor performance-oriented blades, but we still have some, it doesn't matter. Whatever your preference, it seems like Zieba knives will take care of you, but yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about action here. So on the S3, what we have working here, the reason that it's falls shut is really the thickness, weight, and mass of the blade, and the fact that this is well broken in because I play with it all the time. On this S7, it's brand new. It's very, very smooth. It's frictionless, but this blade is so lightweight and thin, you're not really going to have the same type of fall shut action, right? It's just not going to do that. But let me tell you, the detent strength, the shape of the flipper tab, and the action and the crispness, I mean, it flips. It flips like a custom. As long as you're not expecting that little teeny tiny thin blade to just fall shut, you're going to be happy with the action there. So I don't have an issue. Detent is nice and strong. very clicky detent, but not an enormous amount of resistance coming out. I think it's one of those knives where the relationship between here and here, the leverage that you get to break the detent, is just appropriate, right? And it's pretty easy to keep your hands off the lock bar. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that frame lock side. I kind of showed that preemptively. How about carry profile? Well, you guys already know that it's really thin. So up against a knife like the Spyderco Para 3, you can see there, even with this being a titanium frame lock, it's still just ever so slightly thinner. And then in terms of height and profile this way, up against the Para 3 and PM2, two knives that are kind of awkwardly tall, but nobody ever seems to complain, it's simply not going to take up a whole lot of room in your pocket. So if you're used to the Para 2 or Para 3, and you're happy with knives that have similar carry profile, you're not going to have an issue with this thing in your pocket. As usual, if you carry other things in your knife pocket besides your knife, that flipper tab might bother you, but if you're like me and you only carry the knife, then it's probably not going to bother you. Let's go ahead and weigh it. We are looking at a marble carbon fiber front scale, Damasteel blade, and an unmilled titanium lock side, but there's just not a whole lot of material here, so this is coming in at a completely understandable 3.35 ounces. It's a little above that ratio of ounce and inch for blade. You know, the truth is that the overall profile and the overall weight of this guy simply make it a non-cumbersome knife in a multitude of situations. Even if you are wearing, you know, thin pant material, light pant material, this isn't going to be the biggest, chunkiest, heaviest thing in the world. In fact, far from it, it's going to be pretty darn easy to carry. And that's pretty cool because it's a custom knife. This knife has a lot of features that actually do cater towards someone who plans to carry and use their custom knife. Oftentimes, in fact, part of the reason that I, it's like I said, the reason I don't do a full review on a custom knife is because it's like I always critique knives from a functional sense, right? So somebody who's made a fantastic art piece of a custom knife and I come at it and I start criticizing and I'm like, well, it can't do this or it can't do that. That's not always the reason that people buy those knives, right? So it's really hard for me to do that. But if I were to come at this from a standpoint of, does it have utilitarian features? Can you actually use this? This knife has a lot of utilitarian features. So let me say that before we get started. This is going to cater to people who want to spend a lot of money on a nice custom knife and then actually go out and use it. You can see the front scale here is a beautifully contoured, beautifully set marble carbon fiber scale. Fit and finish all the way around the scale, the lips around the screws, the seams, the seamlessness up against the titanium liner underneath. It's just perfect. Beautiful, beautiful marble carbon fiber scale. You can see there. Just absolutely stunning. It always, marbled carbon fiber just looks beautiful to me. Wonderful. Flipper tab is a little tiny and pokey, but it is nicely rounded off. The only reason it's going to dig into your finger a little bit is because of how small and thin it is. But, I mean, it's going to take a few dozen flips before you're like, my index finger is mildly annoyed, right? It's not something I'm going to dwell on. The Damasteel blade is beautiful. We have a sort of semi-mirror finish amidst those acid etchings. I just really like Damasteel. It's beautiful. For those of you who don't know, Damasteel, unless I'm incorrect about which steel they use, because Damasteel, the company, actually makes a steel called Damasteel, which is a mixture of some nickel-based metal and then it's RWL34. And the end result is essentially a steel that has very, very similar performance to CPM 154, which in my opinion is one of the very best user steels of all time. So if that is the case here, that's essentially what you're looking at for a user steel, which is why I say this has a lot of elements that, cater towards people who actually want to use it. If it is one of Damasteel's other steels, they have different steels that they use that look similar to this. I don't know the properties of those. What I do know is that Damasteel makes steels that are meant to be used. So no matter what the composition of this is, and I'm 99% sure it's just their proprietary Damasteel, the blade is meant to be used, right? It is not art Damascus. It is not something that's just made to, it is made to look pretty, but it's also meant to be used. And it's got powder technology in it, it's not a ingot formed. Damasteel is essentially powder formed Damascus using RWL34 as the base, the way that I understand it. But I'm not a metallurgist. I'm not a professional. I'm not into metallurgy. So take everything that I'm saying with a grain of salt. Anyways, the blade here is a beautiful harpoon clip point is what I would call it. All of the lines allow your fingers to fall naturally into the positions that you would expect. Right here at this harpoon notch is just wonderful in relationship to where my index finger and the rest of my hand falls back here. We have actually functional jimping right here. Doesn't bite into your finger. Really like that. Everything's been knocked down. There's no sharp edges other than, of course, the tip and the blade itself, which, by the way, considering the grind of this blade, we actually have a little bit of a compound grind going on here, hollow and then flat up front. All of this is incredibly thin. I am not going to touch that spine with my calipers, but I can show you guys right here. Here it is up against the Ritter Hogue. Ritter Hogue's at 125 thousandths. That's thin, right? That's 125 thousandths is pretty thin. This is much thinner than that. I'm going to guess that this is Benchmade bug out thin, or possibly a little bit thinner. Rest assured that the final cutting edge is absolutely ridiculously thin. That thing is going to be very performance oriented, or at least in terms of sliciness, you're going to be able to do that. Even considering that, it's not like it's a fully flat ground blade or a more, something like the Ritter Hogue that's like really slicey, the grind, but just because of the thinness on the spine, what it comes down to on that cutting edge is just super thin. You have that nice belly, you have that nice clip point. This is a fantastic EDC blade. I gotta admit, it's not necessarily Zieba's logo that bothers me. It's that they put it on this Damasteel blade. On the standard version, they have a standard version of this knife I don't think it's M390. I think it's something else. The standard version of the blade. And I know people are going to get on me. They're like, you should look that up before you... I can't remember what it is. There's a lot of letters and numbers that go with these, S3, S5, S7, this or that. It's really hard to remember everything, but the standard satin finish of this blade, it doesn't bother me as much. But on this beautiful Damasteel blade, it honestly kind of takes away from it a little bit for me. It's not a deal breaker, but I just kind of wish that it wasn't there. That's a little thing. I wouldn't put too much stock into it. You can see we do have some nice shouldering there, so it does wrap nicely around the stop pin there, so that's always nice. The edge is all the way around, nicely rounded. I mean, that's usually the case, but I always like to point that out. There's not really any hot spots or anything like that. Ergonomics on this guy are just great. I can just barely get my fingers wrapped all the way around it. Because this is a little bit pointy, I feel it a little bit. If I was really bearing down this knife, you might feel it there on your index finger, but I can't imagine doing anything with this knife where I'm really going to be bearing down on it that hard if I was going to use a custom knife as an EDC knife. So I don't know if that's really anything I should be complaining about. It's just beautiful. Nice. Oh, by the way, go ahead and plug this stuff like I always do. My handy dandy Ouija bit selector and Ouija magnetic stubby driver. 2 items that are incredibly inexpensive and very recommendable to everybody. You can find them down in my Amazon store, the store that I talked about right at the beginning of the video, under knife maintenance. I'm not actually going to touch this knife with my tools, but I can tell you guys, because I know this, I looked it up to be sure, that all of the screw heads, at least for the outside, are T8. And that includes the pivot. You can see there, 1 screw back here, and then you can see the screw right there for the lock bar insert and the screw for the other side. There are some hidden screws underneath there. I'm going to guess that those are also T8, but I'm not going to find out because this isn't my knife and it's a very expensive custom knife. I just wanted to sort of show you guys there that it does have the hardware that I always prefer. I do not like T6. In fact, I don't like anything smaller than T8, so I'm happy that, this is T8 for those of you who plan to use this and then eventually, or at some point break it down so you can do your regular maintenance on it. I don't necessarily need a lanyard loop on my knife, but it's semi-unobtrusive. Where they put the pocket clip, it's not, I wouldn't say it's shallow carry, but there's a fair amount of the knife sticking up. I mean, this looks cool, but it's kind of in the way of the pocket clip. In terms of actual carry, though, in and out of the pocket, this thing's just fine. The pocket clip catches a little bit. There's quite a bit of stiffness, and it really kind of wants to dig and fight your jeans just a little bit. I imagine it's some of this texturing right here. It's not terrible. It's just something to keep in mind. This knife has a little bit of a surprise. If you guys remember on my... Actually, I don't think we've reviewed this knife yet. This one's got this awesome skull backspacer. And right when I got this knife, I thought, oh, they didn't do this skull thing. And then I turned it just a little bit and found those guys right there. That's really, really cool that they decided to sort of tuck those skulls in there. I love little things like that, you know, and I really like, sorry, I'm shaking the camera all over the place. I really like that it's just a little bit hidden. It's kind of this little thing that's fun. You know, if you were to hand this knife to somebody, which God forbid you do that because, you know, that's not something that I ever like to do, is hand my knives off to non-knife people. But if you, let's say you've got a friend who is a knife person, you hand it off and they know to be careful with it and they know how it works. It's not something they're going to immediately notice. And that's fun. That's just neat that they decided to tuck those away under there. It serves no functional purpose. It's just really cool. And it's a small feature. It's a small detail of this knife that just makes me love it, right? It's just cool. It doesn't have to be anything else other than that. It's just cool. The pocket clip is unbelievably simple, but it does its job. It is titanium. It has that flamed finish. Here's what's interesting about this, this texturing back here. The first time I touched it, I thought, is it fuzz? Do they have are they little fuzzy inserts? And no, what it is it's actually it's textured titanium. To the feel, you've got smooth, or these little parts right here, and then these pockets are little pockmarked titanium that have also been flamed. So it gives it this kind of a leopard or cheetah look, but you also have the flamed look, and then it adds some texturing on there that actually does provide a little bit of traction on this side of your hand. Now, unfortunately, that in combination with the pocket clip is what's fighting my pants pocket a little bit. I don't think that that's on every single one, but it is on this guy. I don't think it's that big of a deal either. It's something that you're going to have to adapt to. When this knife comes in and out of your pocket, I mean, taking that pocket clip off and loosening it a little bit might help. But if it were me and I was going to carry specifically this knife, I would get used to putting it away and pulling it back out with two hands, or at least one hand that kind of braces in the pocket. Because otherwise, you're going to do that thing where you fumble and the knife goes tumbling down the concrete steps. That's a sickening feeling, right? Yeah, it's really nice to look at, and it's honestly very pleasant to the touch. It's not gritty or anything like that, but I think it's fighting with the pocket clip just a little bit. I don't really have a whole lot of complaints about this guy. I'll tell you guys right now, this is not a knife that I can provide a link for, but you can find these every now and then out there, like on Fort Henry Custom Knives and DLT Trading. On those two sites specifically, which is where I looked before I did the review, you're going to find them for anywhere between $600 and $1,000. This one's going to be up on the higher end because it includes a lot of these extra finish touches, the backspacer with the skulls and the Damasteel. I don't believe they all have the skulls. I could be wrong. It's really hard to track all the different variants of custom knives like this because there's not a million versions made, right? It's not like Hinderer knives where I know all the different tiers, right? It's not like that. These are small batch items. They're custom knives, so it's really hard to track exactly. But you're looking for a plainer one, non-Damasteel, you're probably looking somewhere between $600 and $700. If you're looking for a more fancy version, you're probably looking at something like $800 to $1,000. This one definitely being on the fancier side. I think that's about all I can say about this knife, guys. As far as, the people who are actually, might actually be interested in this, if you're looking for a lightweight EDC type custom knife, right? You're ready to jump into the custom knife world, or you already exist in the custom knife world, but you want something that's actually practical, actually usable, but it still gives you that sense of enjoyment carrying around something that's special and interesting and has that exclusivity and that, it has all that stuff. This is a great choice. And honestly, looking at prices of other custom knives out there, the materials that you get, the workmanship that goes into it, and the final product, this is just as competitive. It's just as good as some of the other things that I've seen. In fact, Zieba knives have impressed me. All of the knives that I've handled from Zieba knives have impressed me, and I think that what they make is great. So for those people, you're going to be happy. For those of you who exist in the budget knife world, the production world, the high-end production world, or even the mid-tech world, you may not see as much value in something like this, right? That's the part of the knife world that I kind of exist in. The ultra high-end production world or the mid-tech world is kind of where I like to spend my money. And then every now and then, your standard Benchmade Spyderco ZT knives. If you're kind of in that realm, it might not be something that you're going to just go head over heels for. But in any case, this is a beautiful piece, a beautiful piece of you know, handmade excellence. Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much at Shaker MT 1970 for sending this guy along. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.